Today I'm going to be talking about how to use your LinkedIn reach to influence and engage people. And I'm very excited about this. It's something that I am also wanting to apply for myself, and we're constantly relearning how to do it. Just as I wait for a few more people to come through the door, and hello everyone who's arrived promptly. I got this yesterday, which I'm terribly excited about, and it's got this incredibly clever sort of click folding handle, and you can't see this. It's sort of got a solid metal aluminium thing. It's a handheld coffee grinding thing, and I've got making my first cup of coffee with my Winnie the Pooh mug that I've had since I was 18. I'm geeking out about coffee today, basically. What you want your LinkedIn engagement to be like is like that, like really solid, really reliable, really energizing. And if that isn't a brilliant segue, I don't know what is. So let's get started. I run Articulate Marketing. We are a specialist marketing consultancy, mainly helping B2B technology companies in the sustainability health tech space, and progressive B2B technology companies generally. We do that with websites, marketing strategy, brand strategy, thought leadership content, and HubSpot automation and AI. That's the plug over. If you would like to get my take on how your LinkedIn profile is working, or anything else that we know about and can contribute about, you can book a call with me. No BS, no stress, no hard sell. Honestly, it's just I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm going to share some findings, maybe shake up your world a little bit, give you some new ideas. You can book that at articulatemarketing.com/meet. That's my live calendar. You just book that in half an hour, or email me, Matthew at Articulate Marketing. There is no live chat on this. I'm really sorry, but thank you very much for the little emojis for the coffee there earlier. The reason is I do this on my own. I'm trying to do one every week or two. And this is, in fact, the 100th webinar that I have, or Articulate has hosted. I've probably done about 95 of them. Anyway, so next webinar is going to be all the things we've learned from doing 100 webinars. And that's coming up in a couple of weeks. There's a whole raft of previous webinars on articulatemarketing.com. Anyway, let's get to LinkedIn. That's what you're here for. So I think what we're going to be talking about here is how you can use LinkedIn. And I think this is a thing because of zero-click search, because of AI search, because of the tidal waves of content. 10 years ago, I wrote a blog and I got 20 years ago, I started in 2006. 20 years ago, I started a blog. I got book offer contracts and I got 40,000 views, 50,000 views a month. And now everybody's got a blog, and my cat's got a blog. LinkedIn is a place where you can still go and build authentic connections with people and reach the kind of people that might be interested in buying your product or service or recommending it. Interestingly, email is the other one. Social media is becoming shitified and you have to pay to reach people. So this is about how you can build relationships and engage with people on LinkedIn. It's a high impact channel, and those sorts of conversations now are increasingly searchable and findable and referable elsewhere. You're still connecting with people, and you get the chance then to build an audience, to engage with them regularly, to showcase your thought leadership, your ideas, and position yourself and differentiate yourself very much at the top and middle of the funnel, sort of awareness and consideration, or even earlier than that, just sort of brand presence, in ways that are actually increasingly challenging to do without spending quite a lot of money. So it's an increasingly attractive thing. And I think in the last year, we have had, everyone wants to talk to us about AI and automation. Right, fine. I think the next most requested topic is, how do we engage people on LinkedIn? How do we reach people on LinkedIn? How do we target and prospect people on LinkedIn? So it's really interesting to see that trend. We can help, by the way. So that makes your LinkedIn profile a strategic channel in your marketing mix. And largely, I think not company pages, which I think have a really important role to play in recruitment and employer branding, but your personal profile. And I think LinkedIn personal profiles have moved on from being static CVs that you occasionally update to being active marketing channels, active active engagement channels. So this is the idea of distributed visibility. It's another way of being found and another way of building trust and brand differentiation. So if your executives in your business are not active on LinkedIn with up-to-date valid profiles and regular, and for some definition of regular updates, you are missing out on probably the highest trust distribution channel you have now. So how do you do it? Well, let's talk about how you would fail to do it first, because like many of you and many companies that we look at, I am also guilty of neglecting my LinkedIn profile. I update my profile page perhaps every couple of years. Most recently, about 4 months ago, I did a big refresh of it. I don't publish enough regular content. I have done over the years and intermittently. I used to see LinkedIn largely as a distribution channel for our blog posts, or my blog posts, native blog posts, links in LinkedIn posts are downplayed by the algorithm on LinkedIn. If you are linking out to something else, LinkedIn is going to deprioritize that content. So you really want to be thinking of LinkedIn as a publication channel. And the result of this is my experience, intermittently, it's what I see a lot of people. Interestingly, our head of sales is very actively using his LinkedIn channel and building his profile and posting about sales and what Articulate is doing. And that's actually very successful for him. So we've got this contrast in the business, and I'm certainly under pressure to do more of mine. The result of this is, if you are neglecting your LinkedIn profile and the collective LinkedIn profiles of your executives, your senior leadership team, you have low engagement, you have flat follower growth, there's no pipeline, there's no activity being generated, it's just static, right? So but the next important understanding is just creating activity does not equal influence, right? It's not the quantity of your output or the lack of quantity of your output, it's the quality of your output and how you do it. So we're going to come into some of that thinking. The quality is partly defined by knowing who you are trying to reach and engage them and talk to them about things that are relevant, useful, and interesting for them, but from your position of authority, expertise, and experience. Very often we see generic, safe, interchangeable content. It's very blah, blah, me too. And with AI systems now, it's very easy to churn out a lot of blah, blah, me too content. And therefore, you're competing against a rising tide of meh. Typically, people will try and find a magic bullet on LinkedIn that's going to solve all their problems. We're going to outsource it. We're going to delegate it to an intern. We're going to try it for a month. And actually building a repeatable system to underpin that thought leadership is critical. And then failing to measure it and connect it up to things like HubSpot, so you can track engagement, track lead source and things like that, means that there's no sort of evidence that it's working, and lack of evidence that it's working is the number one reason people stop, right? Why would you carry on doing something if you don't know if it's helping or not? And that we see this pattern a lot. Maybe in your organization you see it too. So what does good thought leadership, good influencing look like on LinkedIn? And I've got a couple of examples on the next two slides of people that I think do it well. Being original, being thoughtful, being individual, being yourself. Nobody else can be you on LinkedIn, right? It doesn't mean necessarily you have to do all the work, but you do have to bring yourself. The more it's based on individual expertise, experience, and authority, that famous EEAT from Google, the T stands for trust, the better. If it's something that ChatGPT or Claude can write, you probably shouldn't be doing it. If it's something that ChatGPT or Claude can help you write, but it's your idea, fine. I think we're past that sort of Luddite. You've got to type everything out on a manual typewriter before it's legitimate. I think it helps to have opinions. And I think it has to connect to the context, what's going on in the world, what's going on in your market, what you're seeing, something that makes it timely, right? Newspapers don't sell because they have old news in them. And as I said, I think that this is a mantra I've had for the 25 years or so I've been doing marketing. You've got to be relevant, useful, and interesting. It's just, if you're not, why bother? Okay. So how do you claim this sort of space of expertise and authority? It all comes from positioning. The stronger your positioning, the easier it is to write content, the easier it is to make it effective, the easier it is to be making those repeatable insights and core sort of break through the noise. You may not appeal to every single person on the internet, but that doesn't matter, because what you're trying to do is talk to the set of people who are your target personas and target ideal client profiles, or the influencers that can help you reach them. So focus is critical, and recognition of that focus is what drives growth. If you talk to and try and talk to everybody about everything, you become indistinguishable from everybody else, and become very bland and boring, and you need sort of Coca-Cola's marketing budget to talk to everyone on the planet about something. The more narrow your focus, the greater your perceived experience. So here is one example of somebody who's, I think, extraordinarily effective on LinkedIn. So this is Jason Fried, who is co-founder or founder at 37 Signals, the company behind Basecamp. He's got 163,000 followers, which means that every pronouncement of his is going to be immediately absorbed, amplified, repeated, shared by a pool of people that most magazines would be envious of. Right? I mean, when I was writing for Wired, it had a circulation of 500,000. Popular Science had a circulation of a couple of million when I was writing for them. But most UK magazines, like business magazines, Director I wrote for, I was editor-at-large at Real Business, and this is back in the early 2000s, 40, 50,000 circulation. And they were giving it away. I mean, they were free to members or free to people who signed up for Real Business. It's 163,000. Amazing, right? So he is talking about how he sees the world, how he sees software development, how he sees the way businesses should work. I mean, he's a New York Times bestseller, but most of the books that he writes, and they're well worth reading, agree with them or not, most of the books he writes are assembled from chapters that look like formerly blog posts and now LinkedIn posts. And he writes these little mini essays. And when they come out, they're always, I think, always thought-provoking, interesting, opinionated, and it's working for him. So there is a stellar role model of LinkedIn influence to go look at. Here's one that's a little closer to home for us. Our friend Will Critchlow, he runs SearchPilot. SearchPilot is a client of ours. They do SEO experiments for e-commerce businesses like Marks and Spencer. So it's really, really hardcore SEO cleverness. He is a fascinating person, got lots of opinions, but what he does is he's sharing different kinds of content. So it's not this long form essay that Jason Fried largely uses, it's videos, and it shares slide decks and things like that. So it's snapshots of the deeper intellectual work that they do at SearchPilot. They run a lot of experiments, they generate a lot of insights, and for their quite small audience, which is sort of SEO owners in e-commerce businesses, of which there may be, 5,000 in the world at most, it's really invaluable material. So I think that's a really good thing. And he publishes regularly, and he does it, he's good at very eloquent talking, so he does these sort of podcasts and webinars, and then he excerpts those videos out and turns that into LinkedIn content. By the way, this is an interesting way of solving the I'm not a writer, so I don't want to write a lot of stuff, without ghostwriting or without subcontracting it out. He's very good at talking, he's very good at engaging with people and interviewing and kind of pulling that stuff. So a tool that I'm using now, like Riverside, is really good. You can do a podcast, you can do a webinar, and you can turn it into these little LinkedIn content. You can use AI to extract a little, paragraph or two to go above it, put subtitles in. It's a very, if you get the system set up, it's a very efficient way of generating content that is still authentic, human, expert, authoritative, right? It's not AI generated because it's coming from a live person talking. So I think this is a really interesting way of doing it. There are a lot of interesting tools out there. Riverside has some, HubSpot has some that can do this sort of content pipeline, content engineering work, and that automation is very interesting to us at the moment. So if that's something you want to talk about, we would love to have that conversation. Okay, so if you can achieve this sort of regular output, consistent output with the right content, targeted at the right people with a strong position, you can see growing engagement. You'll start seeing those likes, those comments. You'll start seeing inbound messages via LinkedIn. And Edward, our head of sales, is getting those messages. Like, I saw this thing on LinkedIn that you said, and we have this problem. Can you help? Not huge volumes, but it's like, it's great for, so as a return on the time he spends. It's an amazing, thing to get inbound leads that way. Not huge numbers, but some. You see profile views growing, and you're starting to see that content referenced in conversations with people. These are clues of success, right? Success leaves a trail of clues. If you see them, keep following the trail, keep digging. However, it is not an overnight magic bullet, quick win, do it for a month and you're golden. It can take several years to build up meaningful audiences, especially if you're starting from scratch, especially if you're finding your way. Authority compounds slowly and then grows exponentially. And this is a thing that frustrates a lot of our clients, a lot of people we talk to, both about organic LinkedIn, but also actually with LinkedIn paid. They go, well, we'll spend £1,000 doing an experiment and don't really see the results. And when you're doing paid LinkedIn, that is also extremely susceptible to optimization over time, and a lot of people don't have the patience or indeed the budgets to do that. And we've seen companies throw tens of thousands of pounds a month at LinkedIn advertising with no measurement and no optimization at all, and that's also a huge failure mode. That money could be spent building an organic profile that would have a better result. So expect not to get immediate results. Expect to put time in and be consistent and clear and repeat yourself. For example, some influencers that we looked at, Justin Welch, Lara Costa, Alex Hormozi, they took several years to build up that kind of profile they have. Jason Fried started with the benefit of already having books out in the world and a blog. So put the effort in. Last thought on this before we move on to how to do it properly, slowly but properly. There's a really interesting book called Persuasion by Robert Cialdini. Persuasion, sorry, it's called Influence. And I read it a couple of times over the last decades. I would strongly recommend it to you, how you gain influence. And if you want to be a LinkedIn influencer, influencing people is that. One of the principles is that familiarity builds trust. The more you see a name, the more you see a person, the more intuitively you engage and trust with them. There are other principles at play here as well, but that's an interesting one. So personal brand recognition built over time. So how to do it? How do you turn that positioning into meaningful impact? So start by narrowing your focus. Find a domain that you can talk about authoritatively. SEO experiments, coffee grinders, maybe for me, probably more other geeky things. Find some defined problem or problems that you can tackle. I think it's really interesting how Jason Fried, his books have themes. They're about how to develop software. It was the first one, very influential for me. How to do remote working before it became fashionable with COVID. Although we've always been remote working, so we read that and went, yeah, duh, we do all that. But for other people, not so much. And there's some other, he has these sort of big ideas, these big themes that are expressed through repeated examination on LinkedIn, on his blog. And a strong point of view, POV. This is really, really helpful. So pick yourself a big objective, a big enemy, a big theme to grapple with, and bang away at it and gnaw away at it until you find something interesting and to say. Blair Enns, ENNS, who are in the agency world, is extraordinarily influential, certainly has been for me. he talks about how when he's sort of writing a book and thinking about something, just sort of writing about it, and he does a podcast with David C. Baker as well, and just kind of examining something repeatedly from different angles is a way of deepening your expertise and authority. And actually, if you want to be an influencer, having expertise and authority is really powerful. And the actual process of writing about it or talking about it can deepen that and give you new ways of thinking and bring that expertise, even if it's not there from the beginning. So pick your topic. So the next thing, building on that thought, is influence is not innate. Charisma is not innate. We don't automatically have not everybody, some people seem to be born with it, but it's about showing up consistently, being present. And in this context, although Olivia Cabane talks about power in this context, it's also about it, the power of ideas, the power of your insight, it's the expertise that you bring. I genuinely believe that you can synthesize online some softness or some kind of communication skills. Those can be taught. AI can help. You can be very brusque or very shy in person, but you can amplify and get through that with training, with expertise, with sometimes consultancy support. But you sort of need to anchor it in who you really are. Just passing random thought, thinking about charisma. My ex-wife was in theatre, so I used to see an awful lot of plays and musicals and things and meet a lot of those people, and star power sort of seems to be. But when you see somebody, and I remember Uta Lemper coming on stage live in Chicago and absolutely commanding the audience just by appearing. Judi Dench, the same. She could walk onto a stage and the whole thing would be there. Now, Judi Dench, very famous, very recognizable. Star power has its own compounding, convening effect. Uta Lemper, well, maybe to an audience, a musical audience, maybe she's recognizable, but I don't think so. I don't think she's a household name. But she had charisma in buckets. So I don't know what that says. I think you can learn it. I think you can get through it yourself. We've taught people to host podcasts who were powerfully shy, and they're able to do that. So it is possible. Anyway, moving on. So I think for LinkedIn, this idea translates into clarity, and I think consistently showing up and being clear. I think power is expertise, and I think warmth is relating what you're talking about to the things that the people you want to read it care about, right? And you control all of this. It's not algorithm doesn't control it. So then it's a case of finding ways to grapple with that and express that. So sometimes internally, I call these forms. So a form of a blog post might be a listicle or a case study or something. The forms that you apply on LinkedIn can be, this happened and I learned this. It can be, I'm seeing this in the industry. I was at this event and I saw this trend. We're seeing, the second after AI, the most important thing people want to talk to us about is LinkedIn. For example, is an observation. How we think and how we operate, Jason Fried's remote working principles or software development principles, give you a framework. You might have opinions about things. Your obvious is your talent. The opinion, the framework is right in front of you, and you can just use that. I think one of the pitfalls that we fall into with LinkedIn and indeed all kinds of social media influencing is to think that it always has to be a success story. It always has to make you look good. You can't ever admit you're bad. And we all know where that road leads to. It leads to crazy people posting pictures of themselves as Jesus. That is not the direction you want to go in. I think sometimes it's actually reasonable to say, we tried this and it didn't work. We learned this from it. An experiment that fails, it teaches you as much as an experiment that succeeds. So you don't necessarily have to have success propaganda for every LinkedIn post. I think that's a very important point, and I think it builds trust if you acknowledge the learnings as well as the results and success. Okay, the next thing that you must do is absolutely write for the feed. You are writing for a particular algorithm, a particular delivery model. It has constraints in terms of size and format. You have to help do things that stop people scrolling past you. You have to convey that opinion, that angle, that thing. So that is a language thing, and it's a format constraint. But it's absolutely critical to just kind of look at what other people are doing that got your attention and replicate that. I know when I started writing for Wired, I went through editions of Wired, like micro marking up every article, like how they structured the articles, how they, open things, close things, segued from one thing to another, because Wired had certain forms and conventions and so on, and I wanted to emulate that. LinkedIn likewise, so studying people and figuring out what they're doing. Thinking about the hook is really important. Structuring your piece into, here is a hook, here is an observation, a finding, a thing that's going to be, that's interesting, I'm going to read more. Turning that into a specific insight and then breaking it down and ending with a punchy conclusion. I think that's a reasonable format to apply to, certainly if you're getting started, but the majority of LinkedIn posts. These attitudes, telling stories, sending signals, sharing data, challenging convention, teaching, all are strong positions. My only slight vibe about the authority teaching thing is it's often confused or conflated or repeated in this sort of success propaganda. I will teach you how to do this thing brilliantly because I'm a genius at it. All you have to do is sign up for my $175 course. That's very common on LinkedIn, and I think it's a trope you want to try and avoid. But if you can share what you learn, that's a different story. So you want to set yourself up with a editorial strategy. Block out some time, think about what you want to do, plan a week that maybe on Monday you're doing a perspective sharing exercise, challenge thinking early in the week. On Wednesday you're sharing a story about something that happened, a reflection, a human connection. On Friday you might be sharing something that has authority, like this is a thing that we learned to do, or this is a thing you could do, or this is something that's, something interesting you might want to consider. We would recommend avoiding over-indexing into one format. Try different things. You'll very quickly see which ones work for you and which ones you find easy to do. And maybe try changing them up over time and testing different things. What you're aiming to do is to make LinkedIn into a repeatable system rather than a creative burden. It shouldn't be something that looks like writer's block to you. It should be something like, right, this is my LinkedIn half hour. It's very challenging to fit this into a busy schedule. We all have more to do than we have time to do it in. So also kind of once you've got the system set up, try to systematize it. Don't overthink every single post. Just go, okay, this is this week's ideation. This is this week's sort of observation post. This is where AI can get quite helpful. You can build you can work with Claude or something to build a structure for it, analyze, some of your existing writing, look at what works on LinkedIn, get some advice, and then go, okay, I want you now every week to coach me through coming up with these sorts of posts. You share your ideas and with it in a sort of informal way. Maybe you just talk to it and then have it help you structure that out. That's a way of using AI that still, I think, allows for authenticity. You might get very bored about saying the same thing over and over again, or related things, or grappling with the same question or problem. Your audience probably not, because they may not see all the other things you've talked about. So Jason Fried will talk for years about remote working. I mean, dozens and dozens and dozens of blog posts, a book, LinkedIn posts. Not everybody is seeing all that stuff. So be prepared to get a little bit bored. Maybe you will talk about some things, the same thing from different perspectives. LinkedIn, like social media, is ephemeral. So the stuff that you've written before sort of floats down the river and you say something new, whereas a blog post is sort of on there and indexed or not indexed for a long time. Although, talk to me, buy me a beer and I'll talk to you about how blog recency is an increasingly important factor for AI. So almost out of time. I apologize as usual, rabbiting on. Definitely start by spending some time updating your profile and thinking about keywords and proof points and things like that. Think of it more as your credentials and your primary content than a online CV. Again, AI can help you, coach you through that and think about it. Look at people who do it well. Yeah, I'm going to zip forward to measuring this. You will get an email with these slides and the recording of this shortly. We think that it is possible to measure all of these things, and over time, giving yourself maybe a 3 to 6 month early ramp up to commitment to see whether you can get these results. HubSpot can give you this kind of reporting, and we can build these dashboards. LinkedIn will give you some of it. Important point though is it's very easy to aim for direct lead attribution, and that may not be initially the primary outcome of your LinkedIn influencing. You may get people messaging you going, I want to buy your product, or you may get people coming to your website because they saw something on LinkedIn and then signing up, and you can attribute that lead to LinkedIn. But it's just as likely you're building awareness and influencing people over an extended period of time. So think about the correct framing of this measurement, although you can measure it. The correct framing is its conversion efficiency at every stage in the funnel. It's supporting that funnel. It is not like a direct, I did a post and I got 5 leads out of it. In our experience, LinkedIn influencing activity works best when you are also taking a holistic view of LinkedIn. LinkedIn has a lot of functionality around employer branding, around employee advocacy, around social selling. You can set up newsletters. And if you're taking that broader view of LinkedIn rather than sort of random acts of LinkedIn influencing, the whole thing multiplies up very efficiently. And I would strongly urge you, if you're thinking about paid LinkedIn, to think about all of these other things first or as well. Just doing LinkedIn advertising in isolation can be painfully expensive. But just avoid the vanity metrics. And don't fall into the pitfall of measuring things just that may or may not be relevant or useful. Right. Here is an ROI model that you can come back to. All of these things are potentially measurable, and they should talk about this full funnel intent and engagement that I talked about earlier. I'm conscious that I'm 3 minutes over time and you're all desperate to go back to your coffee. So I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you very much for joining. Please get in touch if any of this resonates. I'd love to talk more. I'd love to find out how you're using LinkedIn, learn your experiences. We all learn together. Email me, matthew@articulatemarketing.com, and you can sign up for a meeting with me, and I'd love to have that. If you're listening to this and watching this, you're my people. articulatemarketing.com /meet. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful Wednesday.